So for this hour, we're going to be covering stats. So we're going to cover hopefully 3 to 5 stats reports, depending on how long it's going to take. These are basically my favorite stat reports, the ones I find provide the best bang for the buck. So let's get started. 1 second. So in the last hour, we finished off with the stats dashboards, which are cool and provide some really great information, but they're not meant to be printed or shared. So that's what we're going to be focusing on this hour is, okay, how do you get that data and then be able to send it out to your clients? So the first stat report we're going to focus on is the market summary report. The market summary. Now you may notice that market summary right up here on your dashboard. And if I go to menu, I can go down to statistics and check the star. So that's been added, and I'm gonna actually remove the save search so that market summary is there. Otherwise, what we did yesterday is you can type in menu items, and if you want to pull up a market summary right here, you can do that. So I'm gonna click on market summary to load my market summary stats. Give it a second to load. And you see market summary for March 2020, and it says Allendale. I ran this when I was prepping for the class. What you are likely going to see, and let me just make sure I get that as well, is you are going to see it just say residential. So just give it a second. Now, when it says residential, I want you to write this down. Residential equals Northwest Mississippi. So residential, when it's showing this, shows everything in the MLS. And as we saw in the last hour, that can be pretty interesting information, but a lot of times there's just not a lot of variation because it's looking at a lot of listings. So you may want to customize stats for a specific subdivision or a city. And I'll show you what I mean. Again, that sold to list ratio, this absorption rate and the sold to list ratio, these are the same gadgets you basically saw on the dashboard, but because it's for everything, we see, okay, it just goes between 98 and 97. That really isn't that interesting unless I break it down to, a subdivision or something more manageable. Absorption rate, goes up a little bit, kind of over the fall and the winter, and then it comes back down. So you do see a big change in the last couple of months, but this might make more sense if you're looking at this at a subdivision level. And we're going to scroll down. The market, quite a bit of variation, but you might find this better at the subdivision level or the city level or a map shape level. But down here, this is some really interesting information, is our summary statistics. So below, if you scroll down past these 6 kind of like gadgets, you'll see year over year. So we have the absorption rate of 2.6 versus last year 2.26. So the absorption rate has been dropping, so the seller's market has been getting hotter. Average list price. This year, 286, last year, 258. So increase of 11%. Median list price, 274 versus 239. I like to use the medians just because, again, if you have some listings that really skew the average, that's a almost 50% change year over year. Average sale price and then median sale price. So median sale price is 210. Last year was 199, so a 5% increase in sale price, median sale price. And then you have the average days on market. This is why I like to use the median. Look at that huge difference. Average is 61 this year. Last year it was 66, where median is 18 versus 24. So you have some listings that have been on the market for a really long time that are skewing this average. So I like to use that median, but that does show you days on market are dropping. Now this is at the entire MLS level, so it's interesting. But if you're dealing with a client who, in a certain subdivision, they think that their property's been on the market too much, you can actually narrow this down to the subdivision level and say, actually you're under the days on market, we're good. Or a lot of what this next hour is going to be is when you have clients that are kind of fighting you on stuff, you can back up your argument with stats to show, hey, actually we should probably drop the price because we've been on the market too long at this price range. And you scroll down and then you just see a breakdown of sold listings, pending listings, active listings, new listings. There we go. Okay. So again, this is everything for the MLS. And we know that because it says residential. So I ask you to write down residential equals NWMS. This is the entire geographic area. But if we want to break this down to more manageable, something that makes more sense to us, or something that we could email or print for our clients, that's the purpose of this report. Is we're going to go up to customize and then click on new location. Customize new location. And when we do that, it gives us a new location box, a report date, and residential, or if we could do other types. I'm just going to focus on residential for this class, but I do want you to pay close attention to the report date. Assuming there's good data, you can go back quite a ways. So what's important about this is, okay, maybe you're dealing with a client and they listed their property, they bought it 5 years ago, and they said, well, 5 years ago, this is what the market was like. Well, you can actually take a look and see what the market was like 5 years ago. But I'm going to keep it at March 2020, and we're going to click inside this city postal code. Remember, like I said in the last hour, these are suggestions. These aren't the only options. It's just most recently used ones. And we'll see some of our map overlays. Remember our D-Place, our Dickens Place Pinehurst map shape we drew? That was across a couple different subdivisions because maybe they're very similar, and you want to look at stats combined, because this, like the stats gadgets, only allows you to select one option. So if you want to use more than one subdivision, you draw a map shape around them and then just name it something you can find, like D-Place Pinehurst, and use that. So for this one, I'm just going to use Cherry Hill because it looked like there's quite a few listings in there. Double click. Again, you can only select one option. I'm going to click on search. Give it a second for it to load. So we see the number of listings. Now we see this huge jump in listings in January. Now this might be that these were all new construction, all released at the same time. I don't know your market, but if you work that area, you would know what the cause of that is. That's probably why the absorption rate jumped up. And then sold to list price ratio, we're even seeing, look at these ratios. So there might be some serious competition that month for some properties. But basically, you look at this, clients are getting what they're asking for. Days on market, if there's no data for that month, it's not going to have that information. Price volume, so yeah, there's a huge bump. It's probably because it was new construction. But then we look at summary stats. The absorption rate last year, this might be a new subdivision while there's no data, where absorption rate still is quite low. We see the median list price. Let's do this for another location. I'm going to do this for, let's do Cherry Tree Park. See the number of listings. And on any of these gadgets, when you see this, what looks like a wrench, you click on this, it'll actually let you add more options or change options. You can choose what's there. Or if you click on this right here, whenever you see that this finger pointing thing, looks like an index finger, it'll let you select or unselect things. And then we see, so the summary stats for, we're looking at Cherry Tree Park. We see last year 1.47, this year 0.86. So it was a seller's market last year, but it's a much even stronger seller's market. Look at that median days on market. Things are going 2 days right now, whereas 61. So right now, this is a really, really hot subdivision. But one thing we do notice is look at the sales price, 283 last year, 216. So it's possible things have changed quite a bit there, and that's why things are going so quickly. People are buying up these properties. So we've run this at the subdivision level. We could also go to customize. Let's go to new location. Let's run this for Olive Branch. So it could be a city, it could be a postal code, whatever you want to do this for. Let's do the city of Olive Branch. Pay close attention to this. A lot of times you type in something like Olive Branch, there's a bunch of different options. So make sure you're choosing the one that you want. So I'm going to use Olive Branch and click on search. I'm just checking to see if we have any emails or texts that have come in. Looks like there's none. So this is for Olive Branch. And then we scroll down, we see the gadgets, but also now, so the absorption rate has actually gone up a little bit in Olive Branch. And we see that the price is still going up a little bit, but not a huge change. So Olive Branch is different than other locations. That's why I like to run this at a more localized level because it provides you some valuable information. Okay, so we know how to create a new market summary report for different areas. If I go to customize, I will notice now that there's previous locations. Every time you run a location, it's going to show up in your previous locations. So that's what we see right here. So we see these previous locations, and it's going to save it. And then I can always go back if I wanted to run it for Cherry Tree Park, say 2 years ago. I can do it, give a second to load. Now for Cherry Tree Park. So this was when the market was a bit different. Look at those days of market, quite a bit different then than it is now. So every time you run something, you're going to be able to find it in your previous locations. So if you go into previous locations, I do want to point out one thing that's cool though, is that if you click on the star right here, it's going to allow you to add it to the favorites. Remember, like I said yesterday, pay close attention to that hover text. A lot of times it provides really important information. So I'm going to add a couple of these to favorites. And you'll notice they disappear from here because they have now gone to customize. They're now in a section called favorite locations. So I'm gonna click on favorite locations, and now I see the two my favorites. So a lot of people, what they'll do is, they'll run this report every month or so, and then they'll email it or they'll print it, and then they'll share it with clients. We talked about this yesterday. 77% of people would recommend the realtor to a friend or family member, where something like only 12 or 20% of people remember the name of the realtor. So one thing you can do is let people have access to the portal even after you've sold them property, so they associate their search with you. Or you could create stats like this and then email your clients, like say every 3 months, every 6 months, with your information so they remember who the realtor was, but you're providing them an update about their subdivision or their city. And I find if you're just doing this once a quarter, people really do like seeing stats. Now, you don't have to just use the stats that Flex MLS provides in this visual format. What's a really cool option, and I'll do this a lot, is I'll go up to advanced, and you have an option to export data displayed on page or export all downloadable data. If you're a stats person, you can export this data into a CSV, which is a comma separated value, and that's usually what your Excel or whatever your spreadsheet is going to use. Just give a second to launch this. So it's going to send all that data right here. And if you know what you're doing, you can cut and paste. You can put this into a different sort of report format and then provide that to your clients. So a lot of people, if they're a little more tech savvy, basically they got the numbers, they put it into a visual, like 1 or 2 page sheet that they email to their clients that lets them know about what's going on in their neighborhood. So it's a great way to keep in touch with your clients. Also, if you want to email or print it, I'm going to click on print. Give a second to load. And then obviously it would, I don't actually have a computer attached to a printer, so it's not going to work, but this is how you would print it. Okay, let me just close this down. Okay, so that is the market summary report. Now the next one we're going to do is we're going to do the My Market report. Now pay close attention to my explanation. Market summary is good for a location. My Market, you're going to use a saved search. So I want to write this down. Market summary equals location. My Market saved search. So what I mean by that is we're going to pull up My Market, use the quick launch bar. Now they do have some different stats. And when I run the My Market, remember what we said about residential equals everything? And so this right now is for all of Northwest Mississippi. And if I click here, I'll notice there's inventory, sold days on market versus sold price, sold days on market versus units, volume and average price, and hot sheet price change trends. So this is interesting because there's quite a bit of variation for the hot sheet price change trends for all of the MLS. But if you break this down for subdivisions, you might get more valuable information. What do I mean by that? Well, like I said earlier, I'm teaching you these stats so you have a better, when you're dealing with a client who might be pushing back on some things, and you're like, look, it's time for us to drop the price on this. It's just not getting anything, and they're fighting you on it. You have a report that'll actually say, okay, well, this is the average price drop in this month. Why don't we shoot for that? So that's what we're going to be doing in this section. I'm actually going to create a new search for a subdivision, and then we're going to look at these different breakdowns. So let me just, actually, we'll do from our screen, we're going to right click this quick search. And then I'm going to save a search for, we'll use Cherry Hill again, because it looks like there's got quite a bit of properties there. So I'm going to go to Subdivision, type in Cherry Hill. Now, pay close attention to what I'm going to say next. I'm going to be saving a search, but I'm going to unselect the status. Right now we have two results. And again, I'm saving the search for the subdivision, but I'm unchecking the status. Now, the reason I'm doing this is when we go back to that previous screen, it's going to be looking at things like sold days on market. Well, if we're looking at active and active contingent listings, that's not going to work. There's going to be no data. So I'm going to uncheck the status. And so we're going to do Cherry Hill, and obviously we have like 233, or maybe we'll do Cherry Tree Parks. I think that was an older subdivision. Cherry Hill, I think, was just a new subdivision. So, okay, we got 840. So again, I'm not worried about statuses because the stat report will handle that. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to click on Save my search. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this one Cherry Tree Park Stats. Now, the reason I'm calling it Cherry Tree Park Stats is I know whenever I have a save search that says stats, I know no status is selected. I don't want to limit my results by using the status because, again, if I'm just looking at active and active contingent and my report's looking at sold days on market versus volume, it's not going to give me any information. So whenever I save Cherry Tree Park Stats, the stats tells me this is not a save search for a client. This is purely for stats reports. So I can even mark it as a favorite if I'd like. And I'm going to click on Save. So now I have a saved search. Remember, the My Market uses a saved search where the market summary is using a location. So I'm actually going to even, I'm going to relaunch this My Market just so it's updated because I saved the search after I launched that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to Customize, and let me just switch this to the inventory first. Remember, residential means everything, but we're going to go up to Customize. That down arrow or chevron means more options. I'm going to use the Save Search. You could do a search on the fly if you want, but once you've created a few searches for stats, it's easier to go to Save Search, and then the Cherry Tree Park Stats. Now, you'll notice it goes back to 2 years. I can even go back 3 years if I'd like. There's 36 months is an option, but I'm just going to keep it for 2 years and click on Search. So Cherry Tree Park Stats, click on Search, give it a second to load, and now I know it's not everything because it doesn't just say residential. So this is the inventory, and it's going to be in chart format, but also just table format. Inventory. And then I'm going to go to sold days on market versus sold price. And then we're going to see cumulative days on market and average sold price. We see the breakdown. Sold days on market versus units. So all the listings, active, new, sold, days on market. And you can email or print these or send any of these to an Excel spreadsheet if you want to do that. Volume and average price. So this has a lot of great information. So we see active volume, the list price versus the sale price, average list price, sold average price, average sale, sold price to list price ratio. I apologize for the dog whining. He wants to go for a walk. And then hot sheet price change trends. So this is why I like to do this at, like, say, a subdivision level, because you notice some months actually prices have gone up. If you were to look at this at the aggregate, you look at all of Northwest Mississippi, you're going to see basically just the prices have been dropping. Where here we see actually some cyclical changes. So we see the average price change and the average price change percentage. So why is this important? Well, if you have a client who's fighting you on dropping the price and they want to know, okay, what should we drop the price at? This will actually give you a number to work from. So if it was September, you could see that it was actually a 3% drop, but lately it's only been about a 1%. So let's just try a $3,000 drop in price change and see if that helps. If this is a really hot subdivision, you may not have to change much price. And we noticed there's actually price increases where, depending in some places, like in the winter, the price drops are 5-6%. In the summer, there's very little because there's a lot of traffic, open houses. You're the realtor, you're the expert, you're going to know these things. But the purpose of these stats are really to, again, are dealing with clients that are fighting on stuff, or they don't believe, like, I don't need to drop the price. This gives you some interesting information. So we go up to customize. We see quick search or save search. If I go to save search, I will see all my saved searches that I've saved. So whenever you are doing these searches, remember, we're not doing a status. And so what I mean by that is I'm going to do that one more time. We're going to open up a quick search into a new tab. And this time we'll try Braeborn. Unselect my status. Again, for the purposes of a stats report, I don't want to limit it, because like we saw before, we saw the sold days of market versus volume. If I'm just looking at active listings, I'm gonna have no data. So I'm gonna unselect the status. I'm gonna go up to save my search. And we're gonna call this one Braeborn Stats, because whenever I see that stats in a save search, I know no stats has been selected. This is specifically just for a stats report. Mark it as a favorite if I use it a lot. Click on save. And close this down, and we'll relaunch the My Market, just because, again, I saved the search after I loaded this page, so wouldn't find it. We'll go to My Market. And right now it's property type residential, because this is everything in the Northwest Mississippi. We notice price changes really only between 3 and 5%, where if we were to run this at the subdivision level, we notice there's a lot more variation. We're going to go up to customize, and then we're going to click on save search. There's my Braeborn stats. I'm going to click on search right here. And so some months there's just no data, but we see the difference in the price change trends. And we can also look at things like sold days on market versus units, price, inventory for the subdivision of Braeborn. It looks like we have a question. Give me 1 second. Can you do Lewisburg School District? If Lewisburg School District, if there's information there, yes, you could. So let's take a look. Let's just do a new search. But again, I don't know if that it's only works if you have information, you actually have that data. So let's look at a search. Okay, so I just see a intermediate, middle, and high school. It doesn't look like you have a school district field. So I'm just gonna look at the high schools and see if we see something that says Lewisburg. Okay, Lewisburg High School. So you could do it at the high school or your middle school or elementary school. So what you might want to do is actually draw a map shape here. If you know the borders of the school district, draw the map shape, because again, I don't see a school district field. If you had that field in your system, and people selected the school district, that would work well. So you can get around that by doing something like a high school, if you know that works. Otherwise, you could draw a map shape. Go to the school district's website, get the actual map borders, and then you zoom in. Use your freeform polygon to draw that map shape for the school district. And then same thing, we would save this. So I have my school district or whatever I have that defines it. Then I go up to, I'm going to save this because I don't have a Lewisburg school district field. I'm just going to call this one Lewisburg High School to define it, and then call it stats. So I know exactly there's, no status has been selected. Can't emphasize that enough, because so many people will save searches. They'll just use a search that they did for a client and then run stats on it. I'm like, well, why is this not working? Because they're just looking at active listings. So we're going to click on save. We'll reload this because we saved it after we launched the My Market section. And then I'm going to go to my customize, pull up my saved search. And there's our Lewisburg. Click on search. And there we see the inventory. We see months inventory, sold listings. We could always go back to the sold days of market versus sold price, which gives you some rather interesting information. And then the hot sheet price change trends. This is the one that I really like, because again, you have price changes. When are people dropping prices? So there was quite a big drop back in August and September of 2018. But right now, when people are dropping prices, it's not that much. So, you take a look at the days on market. So what I mean by that is, okay, look, you have a client who's listing a property in this area, and you go to the sold days on market versus sold price. So we see that right now, 65 is the cumulative days on market, and maybe they've had a house in the market for 150 days, and they're like, well, it's really time to drop that price. And you want to know, well, what should I drop the price down to? You have your hot sheet price change trends will actually give you that average price change in that subdivision or shape or whatever you're using. Gives you an idea where you can start from. So I hope that answered the question. Again, there's no specific school district field, so I use the high school as like an equivalent. But what you may want to do is, go to Google, type in Lewisburg School District, find an actual border for the school district, and then draw your own. If you're doing a lot of business there, draw your own map shape. If you're curious how we did that, we covered that yesterday in class, and that was recorded. Okay, so the next stat report I'm going to cover is summary stats, and this is a really, really common one. So I'm just going to type in I and V, because this is actually in a section called inventory and production. There's like 20 different stats reports in Flex MLS. When I teach stats, I like to just teach the most commonly used ones and the ones that I find are the most helpful. So I'm going to go to inventory and production. Summary stats is right up in here. It says, this report provides summary statistics for sales, including breakdowns for co-listings and list sale, in addition to stats for new, expired, and other statuses during the time periods specified. So we're going to click on this right here. And I'm just going to do residential, and I could do different property subtypes. So let's just do single family detached, and I could break down my cities. I'm curious of everything that is sold single family detached, say since the beginning of the year. So I'm going to keep scrolling down. And high school's added here. So maybe, I don't know your area, maybe that high school is a pretty good approximation for the school district. But we're going to run this for the MLS. Not for member, because this would just be you. So we're going to do the MLS, and we're going to run it for the first quarter, 1/1/2020, not 2019, and then 3/31/2020, and click on next. So you'll see up at the top it says statistics for the entire MLS for the first quarter, property type residential, single family detached. So we see all the properties that were sold. And the breakdowns, if there's multiple agents involved, we see median list price, average list price. Now here, the median's pretty close to the average, but again, I always prefer to use the median if possible, just because it gives a more accurate median sold price. So this basically 214,000 is your median sold price for the first quarter. And then the sold price versus list price, sold price versus original list price. So this sold price for list price is when it hits pending. That's why this number is higher versus the original list price is once they make it go active, they make it go live. So your sold price to original list price is always going to have a slightly lower number because usually there's frequently at least one price change before something gets sold. Not always, but so this provides some pretty interesting information. So right now the market is pretty good, 98. Now if we were to run this for say like 2012 or 2013, you might see 92, 93% or even less because back then that was really a buyer's market. You had absorption rates that were 10, 11 months. So we're going to run this one more time and we'll go back, say 5 years just to see what the difference is. So we're going to click on inventory and production again. I like to type in INV to pull that up. Do our summary statistics. And okay, we will do residential, single family detached. And let's run it for the first quarter of, say, 2016. And next, give it a second for it to load. And when it's loading, I always check, make sure I did the correct things up at the top. And so there we see the 96.7. So market wasn't as hot then. So people weren't getting, especially the sold price for original list price was 93.5%. And our median sold price was 150,000, where we just ran it. It was like, was it 214 or 215? So just in the last 4 years, the market has it's gotten quite a bit hotter. So that is summary statistics. Just to kind of sum up, this is just a basic summary stats report, basic stats that people will run. You can run it at the aggregate level, which we're doing the whole MLS. But if you wanted to run this at like a subdivision or something, I find I do other reports for subdivisions, like we just did the My Market or the market summary. But this is just kind of a fascinating thing. Look at those days on market, much higher 4 years ago. So to get these summary stats, you can use your menu and go down to inventory and production. But like you saw yesterday, I like to use my quick launch bar for almost everything. Pull up the inventory and production, and then do summary statistics right here. Now, the next one we're going to do is in the inventory production in the saturation analysis. This is where you find the ranking report. So we're going to click on saturation analysis right here. And all the property types are selected. Maybe if I just want to do residential, but I'm going to rank people. So I want to see everything that they've sold, and I'm not going to break down by subtype. Let's just see who's the hot agent right now. Keep scrolling down. Now pay close attention to this. And you're probably going to want to write this down. Saturation analysis equals market share. If you run this for the member, this is just you. But if you want to see where you're ranked, you want to make sure that you're in the market share. So again, saturation analysis equals market share. So just to show you again where that is, we're going to go to inventory and production. And it's the third one down. Saturation equals market share. So we're going to click on saturation analysis right here. I'm going to keep all the property types and scroll down. And that's where that market share button is right here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this for all of last year. So I'm going to type in 1/1/2019 to 12/31/2019 and click on next. Now, it gives you the option to rank members, offices, companies. Now, offices, let's say you have a Keller Williams, and then you have 3 different Keller Williams offices. That would be the different offices. Where company would be all the Keller Williams branches combined. Where in company and offices, that's basically, it's combining them both. So you might have a boutique firm that is just one office. It's not a company because it's only one location, but it does a lot of business. So you want to combine them all. And then rank members in office, if you run this, you'll actually get to see where you're located. Your rank is inside your office. But we're just going to do rank members right here. Click on use this location. And you can do like the number of sales or dollar volume. I like to sort by dollar volume, just personal preference. And I'm going to keep sold selected. Now, listing or selling member. If you want to get stats and you're on either side of the transaction, select this. You might want to take a photo of this with your phone, and so you remember to do the listing or selling member, because people will do listing and selling member, meaning they're on both sides of the transaction. That's not that common. So you're not going to get a lot of great stats. You're going to want to do listing or selling member. And then the next one says calculate numbers and volumes using sides. How sides work is if you don't use sides and you have a listing agent and a co-listing agent, you both get full credits. Where if you use sides, you only get half credit. So it's just personal preference. But if you had a listing agent and a co-listing agent, again, sides does the half credit. So we'll just run it both with sides and without. And then I'm going to just change this to, say, 1,000. I'm not sure how many active agents you have, but we're going to click on next. And it'll take a second for it to load. So generally, always your highest member is always the non-member. It's someone who's not in the MLS. But Sabra Cable was the top agent last year with 21 million in sales volume. And right over that was Larry Webb. And if we scroll down, let's see how many people sold last year. Almost, okay, so we had 833. Now, people will ask, well, how do I find myself? It's pretty simple. You just use the find function in your browser. For a PC, that's going to be Control F. I think with a Mac, it's Command F. And then you would just type your last name. Now, I'm just going to type in Curly because I see she's number 13, but maybe I couldn't find myself. Or Kirkley. There you go. You start typing in, and then it will jump to your name. And if we'll try couch. So I can't find myself, so I'm going to type in couch. There it goes. It jumps, and it says there's 4 matches, so there could be a bunch of couches in the board. And then you see where you're ranked, and you see your sales, and then your volume, average, and what percentage of the board that you take up. So let's do this one more time. We're going to go into inventory and production. Saturation analysis. Remember, saturation analysis equals market share, or you might want to call it ranking report. That's the easiest way to remember it. We're gonna have all the property types, or maybe I just want to do residential. Who sells the most residential? Because maybe someone does really high-end pieces of land, and you don't really care about that. So we're gonna do market share. We'll do the beginning of the year, but you can do any kind of range you'd like. So 1/1/2019 and 12/31/2019. Click on next. Rank members, but you do have the other options. Use this location, and then I'm going to switch back to dollar volume. Listing or selling members. We're going to do 1,000. This time I'm not going to do sides. So just personal preference. Click on next. Give it a second for it to load. And if you don't do sides, Donnie Chambliss is actually the highest with 26.7 million. And like I said before, if you want to find out where you're located, hold on Control F or Command F. Of the Mac, type in your last name. And there you go. So you notice if you were to do sides versus no sides, people can change it quite a bit. So Brian Couch was quite a ways down by doing sides, where this is the actual listings. So, okay, we're going to do one more like stat report, and then we're going to take I think we'll do a 20-minute lunch break just so everyone can get some food. Now next one I'm going to do is not actually a stats report. It's one though that I've kind of been teaching, because people will always ask me this when I'm teaching on site. I call it the All My Production Report. This is a great way to run a report if you want to see everything you've touched. And what I mean by that, well, this, market share is interesting because you see volumes of dollar amounts and you see number of listings. But some of you have been in the business for a really long time, and you might have 300, 400, properties that you've sold. You can't possibly remember all those addresses. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do a search that you can save to show all your production. Now, there's a couple of reasons this can be really important. Well, let's say, you're working an open house and someone comes in and they're just like, well, why should I use you? Why should I use you as my agent? Well, you can, pull up a search with all of your production, email it to them and say, hey, this is what I've sold. Or you could like focus on certain areas and say, like, actually, I've done a lot of business in Hernando. These are all the properties I've sold, and, they want to use you. The other option is, let's say you're just having a bad month. You can do all your production report and then print it off and put it on your refrigerator. And so you just remember this is a bad month, bad couple months, but you sold a lot last year, kind of like a motivational thing. So to do an All My Production Report, we're just going to type in report, the word report, because there's a quick search called report generation. The reason we're using this one is because report generation is everything, all statuses, or all property types, excuse me. So I'm going to click on report generation. And that's what I mean. It has all the property types. So, if you were doing land or commercial and you want to see those numbers. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to type in the word member. Pay close attention to this. I'm going to type in the word member because I'm looking for listing selling member. Don't just click on the first option. Go over to the right and click on listing selling member right here. And then you're going to want to put in your last name. Now, I'm just going to use Chambliss because that was the top seller last year. I believe it was Donnie. And then you want to do listing, co-listing, selling, co-selling. If you were on any side of the interaction or on the transaction, I do that. And then you'll notice that status is already unselected. So I don't have to unselect for status. But what you might want to do is right now this is going to show expired. This is going to show everything. So you might want to actually add in the status right here by typing in status and clicking on status. And then I'm going to go to, looks like it's rented. So I might actually, your setup's a little different than I'm used to. We're going to do this one more time. We'll do report generation. I'm just going to do residential. We'll do member. There's 150 plus Flex MLS setups, and they're all different. So most of the time, I'm going to know how something's set up. So let me do Chambliss again. Do listing, co-listing, selling, co-selling. And status. And then I'm going to do sold. Now, whenever I select an off-market date, it's going to try to limit me. So this is just everything in the last year. If I uncheck this, this now is everything that has ever been sold by Donnie Chambliss. So 567, obviously a lot of properties. He can't possibly remember all those addresses. But if you go to the list tab, this is now a search. So you go to the list tab. It's going to load all those. And so here we go, all those addresses. So this is a search, and it's 567. Tomorrow it could be 568. So this search is going to update. So we're just going to click on save. We'll save this search. And I'm going to call this one All My Production. If I was Johnny, mark it as a favorite. And when I save this, this search will always be available for me. So You know, you could break it down to certain areas if you want, but I find just showing all of your sales is really cool. So again, you have someone says, well, why should I choose you as a realtor? You can send them an email that says, okay, well, this is everything that I've done to back up your argument. Or, you know, say you're having a bad month and you just want to see something. You could always go to print this, do a list, one line, preview it. And now it's going to do something that you could actually put on, like, say, a refrigerator. Put it in a landscape format, print it, and then you can see it. I find some brokerages will do this for all their sales for the past month just to show people what's happening. Okay, so we're going to shoot for about 18-minute break. So we'll start up again at 12:05 just so you have a little extra time to have some lunch. And then in the afternoon, we're going to be focusing on iPhones is going to be at 12:05. And then if you have an iPhone, watch that, and then you're done for the day. If you have an Android, come join us at about 1:02, 1:03, and then we will do Android. The apps have changed a little bit, and so I like to teach the classes just separately because if I'm teaching an iPhone and you have an Android, you may not be able to keep up. So that's why we've broken it down. So I will see you in about 17 minutes.